Although old statistics are inaccurate, the United Nations estimates that the world's population during the dawn of civilization was around 10 million people. This number took about 8,000 years to reach 300 million people at the beginning of the Gregorian calendar, about 2,000 years ago. The first time the 1 billion human barrier was broken was at the beginning of the 19th century. But just 150 years later, and with the first official census issued by the United Nations in 1950 AD, the number had doubled to 2,600,000,000 people. And today, just 71 years after the first census, the world's population has approached 8 billion people. But before we begin, if you are not new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell to receive our videos as soon as they are released. If you are one of those who believe that the reason for the massive increase in the last 70 years is scientific and medical progress, no one can blame you. The answer to a question like this is not as simple as many people imagine. For example, in a study that included 43,000 intellectuals from 38 countries around the world, they were asked the same question about the idea of nostalgia and looking positively at the past. The answer was that 43% of them believe their ancestors in the past were healthier than them, 38% said they are currently better off, and 19% were neutral in their answer. Manuel Quiers, one of those included in the survey, says the current generation is ridiculous and torments itself with things the ancestors didn't even think about, like the type of electronic devices they own or traveling first class. People in the past didn't have electronic devices, not even connectors. Quiers gave the example of his son who suffered from an illness or a nervous breakdown simply because he didn't agree to buy the diving equipment he was asking for. He means to say that the generation is trivial. Another volunteer, Simon Jones-Berg, who works as a marketing analyst for a global clothing company, emphasizes the same meaning. He says that due to his position, he can confirm that some problems or illnesses can affect consumers or merchants if a beloved brand disappears from the market, whereas this matter was never considered a life problem by the ancestors in the first place, let alone a problem related to a brand. And if we consider these statistics to be just an expression of the ideas of ordinary people, I would like to emphasize that scientists support the result of this test. For example, according to a report published on the health-focused website Boldsky, scientists emphasize the distinction of the ancestors' lifestyles and dietary systems. They relied mostly on healthy vegetables and fruits free of hormones for their food. Additionally, they did not eat processed foods or fast food and relied on natural materials for treatment, cosmetics, and everything. Their way of life was predominantly characterized by calm and a lack of pressure, in addition to mandatory exercise through doing their work. In our current era, office jobs prevail, where most people work sitting in front of the computer, and I am one of these people. I don't need to exert any physical effort to do my job. All my effort is mental while I sit at my desk, and this is an entirely unhealthy lifestyle. The journal Human Biology published a report on scientists' belief that people's genetic health will deteriorate in the future. The report indicates that therapeutic development itself will be the cause of this because, simply put, in the past the strongest and healthiest were the ones who lived and passed their genes to their children, making them strong. However, in our current era, with advances in medicine, the weak literally escape death, i.e., survive, leading to them passing on their weak genes to their children. This report supports the ideas of some hardline Darwinists or even politicians who appeared in the past, who believed in ideas of racial purity and the superiority of some races over others. Sociologists also support and present the idea of the lack of equity in receiving treatment. The summary of their talk is that medical progress does not mean that all people have benefited from it. Most of the world's population still suffers from diseases and weak healthcare. In their belief, the diseases caused by modern development are more harmful than the benefit of the medical development we have achieved. And if we trace every new invention, we won't find an invention that isn't a factor in destroying health in some way. Imagine with me the refrigerator, which is one of the most important inventions of the modern era, whose primary function is to preserve food, yet it might be a cause of food spoilage. How many people know the harms of storing food while it's hot in the refrigerator? And how many people know the correct way to store some fruits and vegetables? And of course, this was a problem that didn't concern the ancestors because they didn't have a refrigerator in the first place. Some opinions, of course, insist on the role of scientific evolution in increasing numbers and cite the role of vaccines and treatments in controlling some diseases or even eradicating them. And certainly, no one can dispute the value of scientific progress that has saved millions of lives. The entire debate revolves around the numbers that scientific progress itself has killed. According to a World Health Organization report, 4,300,000 people die annually due to pollution and smoking, and one death occurs every 24 seconds due to traffic accidents. This is in addition to the millions who die annually due to new diseases and viruses, not to mention modern wars that reap numbers of dead equivalent to all the dead from sword wars in the past combined. Finally, some say the reason is the increase in people's average life expectancy in the current era. Statistics indicate that the global average age in 1950 was 46 years, but in 2015, this average reached 71 years. However, demographers emphasize that this average age is misleading, and they say, in short, that citing it is using a truth to achieve a falsehood. The low average age in the past was due to the high number of deaths in childhood, which was met with high birth rates. More people died in the family, but there was no birth control or family planning, so they gave birth to more children to compensate for the deaths. To clarify this topic with numbers, imagine with me a father and mother who had 4 children. Then 3 of these children died while they were young. We will ignore their ages completely, considering that some died at birth or in the first few days. While the 4th child, the only one, lived until he was 60 years old. If we compare it to another contemporary family, we find that the family had only 1 child who lived to the average age of the family members, which is 60 years. Meanwhile, the average age of the children in the first family is only 15 years, because the 60 years lived by the 4th child is divided by the 4 children. Even though, if you look at the final outcome, you will find that the ancestors' family increased the population by 1, and the new family also increased the population by 1. Healthcare has indeed improved average life expectancy, but it is difficult to consider it the reason for the increase in numbers itself, because, in contrast, we now practice birth control. Okay, so does this mean the episode will end without an explanation? Or what? Not exactly. There is no doubt that there are attempts at explanation. It is indeed possible that progress in healthcare is one of the reasons, but it is certainly not the only one. Mathematicians offer another explanation for this increase, which is the explanation of the exponential function. To explain this exponential function, let's summarize it with a simple story about the invention of chess. When the inventor of chess presented the game to a king, the king wanted to reward him and asked him to choose a gift commensurate with his contribution. The inventor of chess requested to be rewarded with an amount of wheat equivalent to the number of wheat grains that would be doubled on the chessboard. The chessboard consists of 64 squares. The requirement was 1 grain of wheat in the first square, then 2 grains in the second square, the 2 double to 4 in the third square, the 4 double to 8 in the fourth square, and so on. And, of course, the king was angry with this request, which seemed simple from his point of view and not commensurate with the great inventor's contribution. But what happened was that when they tried to fulfill this request, they found that the required amount of wheat did not even exist in the kingdom, and that they would need to farm for 500 years to complete it. And this is the explanation that mathematicians present as a possible reason for the huge leap in population. As long as we are increasing at much greater rates.